The well, it's good news. They should have been doing that long ago. In the first place, um, most African countries have actually entered China's debt trap. Because China was giving loans like candy. So African countries owe China close to 700 billion within a decade. So it's not. I don't think it's only Ghana that will be doing it, but other countries in Africa will have to take that route. And it's unfortunate because if you look at China, China in before 1980s weren't as developed as they are now. So we all have similar situations, but China has worked itself to become a superpower. And when you look at that, that's where Ghana's situation becomes a serious concern. We have serious financial management and everything management problem because we were going and taking the loans without thinking. And one thing that I have, noticed with this move is that the same person who was going around contracting the loans is the same person going to ask for debt relief. So this is where the cause for operators replacement becomes very relevant.
But isn't that what should be the best situation? Because the person who takes the money from you should be the person who comes to say, please, I can't pay.
Well, if you go to ask for debt relief, definitely you have to talk about why we are where we are. And the credibility issue is going to be on the table. Because even if debt cancellation is going to take place, they're going to give us that relief. It's going to come with conditions. And China is going to now be a better superpower because even US owe China a lot. But in the case of Ghana, you see this government has a listening issue because most of these things, the debt crisis and all that, the opposition members were talking about it, warning government, and they never listened. So Ghana has now become a begging nation. It has become a nation that oppresses the people with, debt, taking their assets because they had to do the debt restructuring. So I think it's a big concern. It's a good strategy once it has to do with external debt. And anytime they give Ghana external debt, it's a good thing for the country. But once we have serious financial management issues, we're always going to be doing the same thing. We've done that in the 2000s when we went in the early 2000s when we went epic. And then we are going there again. So for me, it's a big concern. It's a good thing, but it tells the real story of our situation, that we will remain beggar nation for a long time. Once our attitude and management issues are not addressed as a nation.
But in the meantime, you're saying this is necessary. Ghana has to go before China and have a conversation on this. There's no way we could not have avoided this. In fact, we should have done this a while back.
Sure. Because you see, it got to a point we're doing all this borrowing, even going into barter. Use our resources in exchange for some loan, about 2 billion Ghana was getting from China. And that's a huge amount of money. If you ask yourself a basic question, where's the money? We took that kind of money, instead of us to invest it in areas that can help us generate enough resources to pay it back, we basically squandered it. We always do that and then go back to these advanced countries or whoever is giving us loans to ask for relief. So it's becoming so anachronistic because Africa and Ghana in particular, we are not innovative. Because if we don't do that and try to find innovative ways of dealing with issues like that, we will always come back to our creditors to ask for this type of reliefs, which for me is very sad. Um, African countries will be faced with that, but I think in Ghana's situation, like I said before, if we had a new finance minister with, the person could have come with different attitude and then go there and make a stronger case than the one who mismanaged it and is now going to negotiate for that relief. I don't know how the story is going to look like, but for me, that is not a good idea. Should have been a new finance minister doing this and then suggesting whatever they will do after the debt relief has been given. I don't know if they come back to do the same thing, we're going to get into the same dish.
There are some reports that what government is seeking is debt forgiveness. Knowing China as you do, would we get that? What should we actually be looking for?
Well, to some extent, it will give us some space to, work on our ability to pay. But it's not going to come free. They will definitely put in some conditions that will not be so pleasant. So, because China they're very good at managing the economy and the finances. So they're going to make sure that whatever we do is going to be to their benefit. They can tell you to, exchange your resources because they know Africa, we still have a lot of resources untapped. So if they come out with such arrangement, it means that it will bond us that we have to sell them our minerals. We have to do this, we have to do that. And that really creates a situation where our country will be controlled by China. Because definitely they will not give us that relief without asking for some things just like the IMF is giving us conditions. They will also give us certain conditions before they do any debt restructuring. But it's good for Ghana in a way because at this point we have no option. We are in between the devil and the blue sea. And going that route, if we are able to get some relief, it will give us some time maybe to reorganize. But the fear is that it's going to push the problem to next government. And they will have to carry the cross because some of these obligations, the negotiations is just to buy time now. But tomorrow is still going to be a challenge because we still need to meet our debt servicing obligations.
I'll come back to ask you whether you think we are doing the things that will make it easier for a government that inherits, that takes over from this administration to pay the debt that we are pushing forward. But I just want to draw attention to two things. First, the president, when he, I think when he had conversations with the German, I think the German foreign minister, asked Germany to help them speak to China. And then there's also this one from the IMF who says they are working hard to press for debt resolution. This is a quote from the IMF boss who says we are working hard to press for debt resolution for these countries, and we've engaged with the traditional creditors, the Paris Club, the non-traditional creditors, China, India, and Saudi Arabia. Our call is very simple. Urgently, we have to act. Will this make our discussions a bit more smoother and easier? The fact that others are involved in talking on our behalf.
Yeah, it's a good thing because when IMF speaks, they will speak with leverage because they are pretty a respected international organization. For our president, he has to stop talking. Not too long, he was telling other African countries to stop taking loans from begging from advanced countries. When he knows very well that he has more debt than most of them. But the truth is that whenever there's that international collaboration and asking for debt relief, they become very successful. So I have believed that that is going to really help to relieve some of the debts of our country, just like other African countries. Even US has challenges with China when it comes to its debt because US wants some cancellations. But US has a very good way of doing some of these things because they have very good trade relationship with China. And then China depend on US for certain things. So there's a bargain, something on the table. But in the case of Ghana and African countries, we don't have a lot on the table. So sometimes we have to take the bitter pill. But with IMF being part of it, my supposition is that Africans may benefit in a way because IMF will do a better negotiations than Ken and his delegation. So their involvement for me, especially the Paris Club, which is made up of very respectable countries, will be, very important in helping us to accomplish that relief we're seeking.
Like you said, if we get debt relief from China, it will always push the problem forward. At some point, we'd have to solve it. And you said, and you said the government has listening issues. Are we able to get this government to do the things that are necessary to ensure that the person who takes over is able to pay or does something about the debts?
You see, now the whole lot of tests they are trying to, is that like someone who got into robbery and then trying to get away from it. So they're looking for every possible means to get out of the current situation so that they can acquire the ability to borrow more. Because they know very well if they don't gain some credibility that will allow them to borrow further, a whole lot of things will happen again. Development programs are now to the ground. So they don't care who they push this debt to. Just like when they were taking the loans, they weren't thinking of repayments. And that is why we got into where we are. And it's mismanagement, sometimes an attitude. They're doing most of these things deliberately to benefit personally. So my thinking is that they will push the problem to future generations. And next government will face serious challenges. Many people are optimistic that when NDC comes to power, we're going to get a relief. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take a lot of hard work. Because apart from the debt, we look at the domestic situation. We are spending a lot. Everybody is complaining about the expenditure. Nobody's listening. We needed to align ministries. We are rather creating more expenditure for ourselves. And the president is not, president and the finance minister are not doing anything to create a path that will give us assurance that if we go past this debt crisis, we're going to have a new dawn that will be different, that will manage our resources well. In the midst of all this, we have a lot of resources that if we had planned well, if we had executed our plans well, we could get out of this debt. But for me, pushing it to the future generation is exactly what they are looking for, and they don't care. They just want the relief to have financial space to keep doing what they are doing, and we are all complaining, spending, and generating no income internally. They're doing nothing to ensure that revenues goes up to be able to deal with the reduced expenditure we are all calling for.
Talking about expenditure, is that actually accurate? Because this is a government that has imposed an e-levy at a time when it was trying to promote the move away from creating a cashless economy. They imposed an electronic levy. They have also imposed an increase in VAT among several other taxes. So clearly, it's a government looking for revenue. Are they not?
You see, it's unfortunate because you see, basic economic sense tells you that, look, when you increase taxes in the midst of situations like this, you are killing the private sector. So they introduced e-levy. At that time, people didn't know the magnitude of the problem. Now they come out with increases in existing taxes. And when you do that, it means you are taking money, the resources from the private sector. How do they reinvest to make sure production goes up, your GDP goes up, and also they are able to deal with the addiction to imports? So if you look at it, it doesn't make economic sense. If we are doing all these things and then they keep increasing taxes, tax is not helpful in situations like this. They rather needed to cut down taxes, take out restrictions on anything that will, obstruct our production process to make sure that we can produce enough. We can allow companies to stay in business. But when you impose taxes on people who are already, in this situation, you are not creating a path to growth in the future. And we will suffer the consequences because the appropriate thing would have been to look at the long term and try to do certain things that will free us from getting into another crisis. So taxes at this point for me is a killer. It's rather going to kill the economy. They should be looking for relief, finding ways to help companies that are still in business. A lot of them have gone out of business because of, the issues that we're having. So why should government be escalating the situation with taxes rather than trying to give them relief support so they can stay in business?
And let me conclude by going back to the analogy you made in terms of alignment of ministers, because currently the opposition has given its MPs the directive, simple, straightforward directive: do not approve any of the ministers the ministerial nominees the president has put forward. Is that the way to go? They're even demanding that the ministerial, the number of ministers should go down to 65, I guess. That's the way to go for you.
Well, I even think 65 is so many. You see, we copied our constitutional system of governance from the West, but we made it so complicated for ourselves. In Britain, you have ministers who are members of parliament. They don't go through vetting process. The prime minister is the one calling the shots. In America here, they nominate ministers, they are secretaries, and then it's through Senate. And everything is structured. In the US, for example, the secretaries are just people who keep the president's secrets on various issues. When it comes to energy, is the Secretary of Energy. And secretary is derived from the word secret. So he keeps all the classified information and also help with the policy direction. So it's a basic thing. And without it, if you have strong institutions, they can still function. In the case of Ghana, it's the same thing. You look at some of the ministries, chieftaincy ministry. We are going to beg from China. We are going to beg from Paris Club countries. That doesn't have all these ministries. But we have them. Why do we have them? We have Ministry of Sanitation. Why do we need a lot of ministries? And this ministry costs a lot because if you go there, the number of VAs, the free fuel, and many, many other things that are happening. So I think what will weaken our bargaining power when it even comes to this debt restructuring is the way we behave. We don't want to change anything. The number of ministers should be reduced. 65, it should go down more. And if they reduce it to even 30, nothing is going to happen. After all, what are the contributions of ministries to it? Because the president that we've given the mandate, Achampon ran ministries within the presidency. He had Ministry of Defense at the presidency, sports at the presidency, and then he had finance. And look at the performance he put up in his, first years. I mean, he came in and adopted that model, and it worked because technically he wasn't taking loans. But with that attitude, he was able to run the country effectively. So I think this government is going to cause great a whole lot of problems more because it is not listening, like I said. Because reduce the size of government would have been very symbolic, even if you see it to be nothing. You look at the number of people working in the presidency, it's so much. And you see, if you are in crisis, I worked for a bank in 2001 when we had financial crisis in the. They set up committees to look within and see what we can cut down. And we cut a lot of things, and the company was able to stay in business. So similarly, if you don't do that, you should go even outside the ministries to agencies. We should be able to reduce the amount of workers. Also, adopt technology so we don't need a lot of people. We don't need to incur a lot of expenses. But this can be done by a government that is forward-looking, that is looking to change something, to present a picture of optimism to the people of the country. But unfortunately, we are not seeing this. And I support 100% the opposition's concern. Because if they are not listening, as opposition is part of government, parliament is part of government, so they should take measures, whatever they can do, to reduce the number of ministers if government is not listening.